Imagine committing a crime so heinous that it makes you the only woman in 70 years to be executed in America. But was her case fully understood? My name's Adrian, and we're here today to talk about the case of Bobbie Jo Stinnett and her killer, Lisa Montgomery. Yeah, if hearing about messed up cases is your kind of thing, this one's for you. So grab a coffee and sit back. Let's investigate. The story begins in Skidmore, Missouri. Now, Skidmore is a very interesting place. It doesn't have the population of a small town, more like the population of an aeroplane, 250 inhabitants. And that's mostly because it's a farming community nestled deep in the prairies of Missouri. But what's more interesting is the history that it holds. In just 3 decades, Skidmore had a local dictator, a murder, a second murder, and then a disappearance. And remember, this is all with only a population of 250. And today we're looking at the town's second murder, Bobbie Jo Stinnett. And for Bobbie Jo, her story begins where it ends. She was born on December the 4th, 1981 in Skidmore. Not a lot is known about Bobbie's past, but elders in the town described her as a quiet yet happy girl as a child. While growing up, Bobbie met Zeb at school, and the two became childhood sweethearts. And in 2003, they both married in a local church to the town. They had great hope for the future. They dreamed about selling their small rental cottage and building themselves a larger home, one that would house both them and their children in the future. And a few months later, part of that dream would come true. In April 2004, Bobbie Jo fell pregnant. They were both ecstatic and expecting the baby sometime January the following year. Zeb worked for a local manufacturing plant for Kawasaki in Maryville, and Bobbie Jo had a few home-time hustles, one of them including breeding and selling rat terrier dogs. So by December 2004, the baby was well on its way. Bobbie Jo was 8 months pregnant, and she was still breeding and selling her rat terrier dogs. She would advertise them online, and part of her business would be to keep a rapport through an online chat room dedicated to rat terrier dogs called Ratter-Chatter. Sounds catchy. Other members of the Ratter-Chatter group knew Bobbie Jo for her sweet and caring nature. They would talk about their passion for rat terriers, but also shared interest in each other's lives outside of dog breeding. It was a small online community, and in those forums, sometime back in mid-2004, she announced to everyone in the forum that she was pregnant and expecting a baby the following January. And around the same time, another member of the forum celebrated that she too was pregnant and expecting. Her name was Lisa Montgomery, and she was from Melvin, Kansas, expecting the baby sometime in December 2004. Other members of the group, though, they were suspicious of Lisa's claims. Lisa was still participating in dog shows, and others noticed that she didn't seem to be gaining a baby bump, especially as the pregnancy drew closer. Bobbie Jo, however, had no reason to be distrusting of Lisa Montgomery. She'd met Lisa, after all, at dog shows previously that year. The two often would talk about the highs and lows of pregnancy, babies' names, and things they'd buy for the babies after they gave birth. In November 2004, Jason Dawson received an email from a woman called Darlene Fisher. Jason was a breeder of rat terriers, and also through his job was a friend of Bobbie's, meeting her at dog shows and also through the online forum. Jason had never met Darlene before, but it was normal for him to receive emails from strangers, usually inquiring about adopting puppies. Darlene asked Jason if he knew of anyone in northern Missouri who had puppies up for adoption, as she wanted to give her kids one for Christmas. Not cool, by the way. A dog's for life, not just for Christmas. Jason knew Bobbie had a dog who had just had puppies, and they'd be ready to go to new homes for mid-December, so he recommended Bobbie to Darlene. He gave Bobbie's details to her that afternoon. So Darlene eventually got in touch with Bobbie through the Ratter-Chatter forum, and she sent an email to her which read, "I was recommended to you by Jason Dawson, and have been unable to reach you either by phone or email. Please get in touch with me soon, as we're considering the purchase of one of your puppies, and would like to ask you a few questions." Bobbie Jo later replied to Fisher that evening, writing, "Hi Darlene, I've emailed you with the directions so we can meet. I do hope that this email reaches you. Great chatting with you on Messenger, and do look forward to chatting with you tomorrow AM. Thanks, talk to you soon. Have a great evening, Bobbie." The next day was December the 16th, and it was warm for a winter's morning, sun often breaking through the clouds. It was a Thursday, so Zeb went to his usual workplace in Maryville at Kawasaki Motors, leaving Bobbie Jo at home with the dogs. Bobbie was waiting for the arrival of Darlene Fisher. Nothing felt out of the ordinary for her. It was a usual day after all. And then at around 2:30 p.m, Bobbie heard a knock at the door. Bobbie Jo answered the door, opening it not to Darlene Fisher but to Lisa Montgomery. She was startled, but before she could even react, Lisa barged her way in. Because, you see, Lisa was actually Darlene. She used a fake name to find out where Bobbie lived. She overpowered the heavily pregnant woman as she forced her way inside the house. Things escalate very fast here. She pulled out some cord from the back of her pocket and started to strangle Bobbie Jo, tightening it harder and harder the more that Bobbie struggled. Seconds turned into minutes as Bobbie's efforts turned limp. Lisa held her choke until there was movement no more. But Lisa wasn't necessarily here for Bobbie's life. No, she was here for her baby. Lisa pushed Bobbie onto her back, and with a kitchen knife, cut into a wound by slicing through her abdomen. But halfway through slicing her stomach open, Bobbie regained consciousness. Think about this for a second. She regained consciousness to see another human being slicing her baby out of her with a knife. She was too weak to fight back, and once the cut was large enough, Lisa pulled the baby out of her womb, wrapped her in a blanket, turned around, and walked off, leaving Bobbie Jo to die. An hour had passed, and Bobbie's mum, Becky Harper, was in town at the local garage waiting for Bobbie. Her truck needed to be repaired, so it was scheduled to be in at 3 p.m. for service on that day. But she hadn't heard from Bobbie since the phone call earlier on. That's a little odd, she thought, so she walked to Bobbie's house. And when she got there and opened the door, she walked into her worst nightmare. There she found Bobbie Jo lying in a pool of her own blood. She was unconscious, and her fists were clenched, strands of long blonde hair stuck in their grasp. Becky screamed, and she ran to the phone to dial 911. Operators later confirmed that Becky described the scene as though her pregnant daughter's stomach had exploded, and that there was no sign of an infant anywhere. Paramedics arrived almost immediately, but unfortunately they were not able to revive Bobbie Jo. She was pronounced dead at 4:27 p.m. It was concluded, though, that the baby could still be alive, considering Bobbie Jo was already 8 months pregnant, though the baby could be in severe distress following the traumatic birth. And so, with knowledge that both a murderer and a kidnapped child were on the run, the hunt to find Bobbie's killer was on. Authorities started immediately, going around local residents' houses, knocking on their doors to ask if they'd seen anything suspicious that day. One resident claimed that they had seen an old red car parked outside Bobbie's house at around 2:30 p.m, and it's a car that they had never seen before. An Amber Alert was put out for the missing baby, though it was difficult to fill a profile because no one knew what she looked like. News of Bobbie's death spread like wildfire. Shockwaves were felt in the local communities, and the whole country heard of Bobbie's horrific death. Although the killer was not known, she was then nicknamed as Womb Raider. Not sure how I feel about that name. People in the Rat-a-Chat community learned of the news too. In fact, the murder of Bobbie Jo is all that they spoke of. Scrolling through posts from the last couple days, one of the moderators, known as Sitkar, looked for any clues that may help with the investigation. And there she found the conversation between Bobbie Jo and Darlene Fisher, which also shared plans to meet the following day. She connected the dots immediately and contacted the FBI on her discovery. FBI computer forensic analysts traced the location of Darlene Fisher's emails to a telephone line at the home of Kevin Montgomery on South Adams Road in Melvin, Kansas, and Kevin's wife, Lisa Montgomery. It was now December the 17th, and at Whistle Stop Cafe in Melvin, Lisa and Kevin were delightedly showing off the newest addition to their family, Abigail. Lisa told her friends that she'd been shopping the previous day when she went into labour at a local store. She claimed that she was taken to the women's centre in Topeka, where she then gave birth to a baby girl. She then called Kevin afterwards to tell him of the news, and of course he was delighted. He ran into the truck and picked her up as soon as he could. But that, of course, was bullshit. While the Montgomerys were enjoying their coffee at the Whistle Stop Cafe, FBI agents were waiting for them, sat outside their farmhouse in Melbourne, waiting for their return. A couple hours had passed, but eventually a dirty red Toyota Corolla pulled up to the farm, Lisa and Kevin emerging with the newborn baby. The agents approached the two, and after mandate, followed them inside for questioning. There, they asked about the baby, and Lisa gave the same story to them as she did to her friends. It wasn't difficult to catch her out though. Agents shared with Lisa that they'd already approached staff at the women's centre, and that there were no records of Lisa being in there on that day. Lisa crumbled. Almost instantly, she confessed to her crimes. And Kevin, he was shocked. He honestly thought that the baby was his. He had no idea. Lisa was arrested and charged with the federal offence of kidnapping resulting in death. Kevin was cleared of any connections or charges. Carl Bowman testified that his ex-wife Lisa could not have been pregnant, as in 1990 she'd undergone tubal litigation surgery after the birth of their fourth child. After her procedure though, Lisa would fake pregnancy 5 more times. Her current husband Kevin testified in court that she claimed that she was pregnant 3 times while she was with him, and all 3 times he believed her. The first 2 supposed pregnancies ended in miscarriage or abortion, but the 3rd time was different, and when he saw the baby in Lisa's hands, he genuinely believed that it was his and hers. Lisa Montgomery pled not guilty to her charges, and her defense attorney, Fred Duckhart, pleaded Lisa as insane in an attempt to avoid the death penalty. He argued that the defendant had suffered a lifetime of mental illness due to the psychological, physical and sexual abuse that she'd endured as a child from both her mother and her stepfather. This didn't work though, because on October the 22nd, 2007, just after 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found that Lisa Montgomery was found guilty of murder. On October the 26th, the jury also recommended the death penalty, one in which the judge formally complied to. And this is where we learn more about the real Lisa Montgomery, because only after the trial was more light shed on her history. When Lisa was a child, it was found that her mother trafficked both Lisa and her sister to other men. And while Lisa's older sister Diane cared greatly for Lisa, at the age of 8, when Lisa was just 4, she was taken out of her family home by social services and put into foster care. Social Securities though didn't take Lisa away, which meant that she was now left all alone to deal with the abuse by herself. Lisa was also the target of her stepfather's aggressive behaviour. He routinely sexually assaulted her and often slammed her head into the concrete, a few times so hard that she sustained traumatic brain injuries to her head. At the age of 14, Lisa spiralled into alcoholism just to get through the nightmare that she was living. But it didn't stop there. At the age of 17, Lisa's mother forced her to marry her stepbrother, Carl Bowman. He would also go on to routinely sexually and physically abuse Lisa. The two ended up having 4 children, but they lived in severe poverty and often had calls and visits from social services. The abuse inflicted on Lisa by those who were supposed to protect her can be described nothing short of evil. She also suffered from fetal alcohol syndrome, as her mother was drinking heavily at the time that she was pregnant with Lisa. However, much of the abuse that Lisa had gone through was not revealed to the jury in her trial. Most of this only came out in her appeal after the verdict. This was actually considered the defense attorney's greatest failure in defending Lisa during her trial. Lisa Montgomery remained on death row from 2007 for 14 years. The United States had actually stopped federally executing inmates shortly before her sentence. But at the end of 2020, in his final days as president, President Trump overturned the hiatus of federal executions and issued a special warrant for the executions of several inmates. One of them would be Lisa Montgomery. This sparked controversy in Lisa's case, as not only did her trial not take her abuse into consideration, But the world has also learned a lot more about mental health in the time since her conviction. This changed nothing, however, because on January the 13th at 1:31 in the morning, Lisa Montgomery was pronounced dead following lethal injection at the federal prison complex at Terre Haute, Indiana. And that's the case of Bobbie Jo Stinnett and Lisa Montgomery. A truly awful murder, and a complicated ending for her killer too. It's a miracle that the baby survived. Victoria Stinnett is now 16 years old and still lives with her father Zeb. Not in Skidmore though, but their old house there is still up to date, empty since Bobbie's murder. What Lisa did to Bobbie is incomprehensible. In fact, it's one of the most vicious murders I've heard to date. Someone who is able to kill in such a way as that should never be allowed back into society, no doubt. But was it worth the death penalty? Remembering her abuse and subsequent mental condition, did she deserve the death penalty above serial killers and other fully cognitive murderers? I'm not here to judge, but what do you think? Do you think she deserved the death penalty? Do you think that she deserved to die for what she did? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because I honestly would love to hear what people think. Thank you so much for watching my video today. If you enjoyed this case, please leave a like. I do plenty more like this on my channel, so if that's your sort of thing, I'd love to have you around for more. So please do consider subscribing to Coffeehouse Crime. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of each other. Goodbye.